Welcome everyone. I hope you can all see me. My name is Garrun Morris. I'm the director of the South African Jewish Museum, and I'd like to welcome you to the third and final of our three-part Community History Online webinar series. This series came about through conversations between myself, Professor Adam Mendelsohn of the Kaplan Centre, our respective archivists, Leila Bloch and Katie Garrun, Eli Rabinovitz of the We Are Here Foundation, and Geraldine Aberbach, who maintains and develops various Kimberley Jewish community pages, which is really the gold standard of community engagement. This series is being co-hosted by the South African Jewish Museum and the Kaplan Centre for Jewish Studies at UCT. And the reason we are doing this is that we came to the realization that there are many people who are interested and active in keeping community histories and heritage alive, and we wanted to create a space for Jewish Southern Africans to connect and share their experiences and what they're doing in this space. As I mentioned in the introduction to our previous two sessions, it's no secret that the South African Jewish community has shrunk considerably. A multitude of communities and congregations across Southern Africa no longer exist. And people who grew up in these communities are actively trying to keep these memories alive. So we wanted to bring all these dedicated people together to form a community and create a space where we can learn from each other, which is why we're doing today's format as a meeting rather than a webinar. It allows everybody to interact and see each other as well. The whole idea of Community History Online is to build a like-minded community and share resources and expertise. That said, if you missed our earlier sessions, you can find recordings of these on the South African Jewish Museum's YouTube channel. Simply go to YouTube, type in South African Jewish Museum, and the video should pop up. They're well worth watching and seeing what you missed out on previously. Also, feel free to share these links with anybody who you think may be interested. Today's moderator is Professor Adam Mendelsohn, the director of the Kaplan Centre for Jewish Studies at UCT. Adam is a highly regarded historian. He's brought a new energy to the Kaplan Centre and has enhanced its global reputation. Adam will introduce today's presenters. He will manage the Q&A, and then afterwards he will wrap up and come back to me, and I will just give you a little bit more feedback as to where we will go with Community History Online after today's final session in this current iteration. So with that said, I'm going to make Adam our host. Folks, please bear with us with any little technical hiccups we may have along the way. And with that said, let me start handing over to Adam, hopefully with no hiccups. All right. Over to you, Adam.
Great, thank you, Gavin, and welcome everyone. I'm also admitting people to join us as well. So sorry, I'm distracted for a second. It's really wonderful to see people from literally all over the world. I mean, I suppose this is the reality of South African Jewry, that we're both still very vibrant communities in South Africa, but we're an international community. So perhaps we're particularly well suited to this idea of creating and showcasing community history, which embraces the online format. So these workshops, as Gavin has described, and as many of you have seen, really have been designed to showcase a whole variety of ways to recover and create community online, community and community history online. As we've been extremely selective, we've been forced to be extremely selective. We know that there are many, many other wonderful projects which have been run by all sorts of people, often individuals and sometimes by groups of people. We've chosen, because of the wealth of projects which are out there, we chose to really focus on a handful of particularly innovative projects to give a sense of what is possible, to give a sense of the templates and approaches that have been adopted, and the merits and sometimes the challenges of those particular those approaches, the constraints of those approaches, and also to give you a sense of some of the resources which are available as well. And our goal here is really to inspire, to connect, as Gavin has said already, and to spur others to create community-focused local history projects. And though this is the final in this sequence of workshops, we're hoping obviously that this is just the beginning of a process, that this is just a way of getting people together and beginning to develop something which will we expect will continue for a very long time. For in addition to encouraging everyone to create their own projects or to contribute to existing projects, our aim is to create a community of those who are engaged in such efforts. That's the broader purpose here, and one in which Gavin has already alluded to. Our focus today is on, again, 3 different approaches, which again collectively demonstrate interesting examples of innovation and adaptation which the online environment allows and in fact encourages. And they're very different projects, but in each case they demonstrate this very interesting evolution and adaptation of over time as the internet has developed, as new approaches have developed. I'm going to introduce each of our speakers now, and then they're going to speak in sequence. And our first speaker is Dave Bloom. Dave was born in Zimbabwe and made Aliyah in 1973. He's been involved professionally in the high-tech and media industries for over 40 years, including senior positions at Reuters. He's currently a partner at Exsys. Dave is also a professional personal historian through his company Milestones and Meanings. And he has researched and edited and maintained the very extensive and impressive Zimbabwe Jewish community websites since 2000. He'll be speaking about how he's used Facebook and Zoom to preserve the footprint of the Southern African Jewish communities of Zimbabwe and Zambia as well. Our second presenter is Eric Berger. Born in Wellington in Holland, Eric grew up and was educated in Cape Town. He's long been involved in Jewish communal work and has been the director of the Cape Town Jewish Cemeteries Board and at the Union of Orthodox Synagogues Cape Council for over 12 years. And he'll speak about how the Cape Town Jewish Cemeteries website evolved from a database of graves to a very innovative fundraising platform and a service to the broader community. And our third presenter is Katie Garrun. Katie is an archivist and information specialist at the Kaplan Centre for Jewish Studies at the University of Cape Town. There, she's involved with the Jewish Living Archives project, something which we work with in collaboration with the South African Jewish Museum, as well as the preservation of the very substantial archival holdings, the physical archives of the Kaplan Centre, which are very considerable holdings that she'll talk about. She has a keen interest in emerging technologies for archives and exhibitions. She will introduce us to the ways in which the Kaplan Centre preserves original material and tries to make them accessible for future use, and for researchers such as yourselves. Again, a quick reminder about the structure of today's workshops. We'll start with all 3 presentations in sequence, and we'll follow this then with time for a Q&A. You're welcome to pose your questions using the chat function used on Zoom, and I'll collect these questions and ask them to our presenters, or you can choose to ask your questions directly during the Q&A session. So, and if you choose to do that, please just raise your hand virtually and I'll call on you in turn. So let's begin then with our first speaker, Dave. I'm going to hand over the host duties to you.
Thanks, Adam, and thank you to Geraldine and to Ellie and to Gavin and the whole crew for putting us together, this seminar together. As mentioned, was born in Zimbabwe, and I got involved in this project more than 20 years ago when I was actually located in Zimbabwe. I was on contract there with Reuters, the company I worked with, and I was in the community where I grew up in, just on contract. I live in Israel. And I realized that the story was of a diminishing community, and if we didn't start to collect stories and collect material, it would disappear completely. So about 20 years ago, when I got back to Israel, I started building this website, which I'm going to talk about. It's zjc.org.il. I'm going to share my screen with you and run you through how the website looks, what it consists of, and I'll show you other elements of what I do. So hopefully you can see my screen, and I'll put up the website. So this website was built on a bespoke platform. I run a software house, and I was fortunate to have access to a platform which I had designed for my own company. And this was going back 20 years ago, so it's already quite outdated, but it served me very, very well over the years. What I just want to emphasize on the website is that it's a lot of work, and when you're doing it as a hobby and part-time, sort of voluntarily, the amount of material coming in and the amount of processing the material and putting it on the website and the whole management of it can be incredibly time-consuming. So I just want to warn anyone who's wanting to get into this that you need to make sure that you pace yourself and and that you allow yourself time to put stuff together. You can see it's very simply menu-driven. With the number of drill downs, you can drill down through. I'm going to show you some key elements of the website. So I was very fortunate to get some volunteers to photograph all the tombstones of the main 5 cemeteries in Zimbabwe: Bulawayo, Harare, Pioneer, Harare, Warren Hills, and Kodoma and Kwekwe. I'll just show you a quick example of how it's done for Warren Hills. It's a very simple format of alphabetical format, and you can search, you can look for and click on a particular tombstone and get to the actual large picture that you want to look at. One of the things I think which is very important that I started out with is that I realized that there was going to be a lot of material on the website. And I think one of the things which I would emphasize if I was to recommend to anybody wanting to get into this is to use and to build into your website a search facility, because in the end of the day, there are hundreds, on my website, there are hundreds of pages, literally hundreds of pages and hundreds of documents, and you're never going to really find it just by going through the menus. So if I was to take in the Google embedded search here, the name Aaron Cohen, just as an example, if I do a ZJC search, it immediately comes up with the fact that he has the tombstone at the Bulawayo Cemetery, and I can see information details of his actual tombstone. I think that's a really important emphasis I want to make about getting the maximum out of these kind of platforms, is that search is one of the main criteria by which people should be able to look for the material. If I was to look at, for example, under my history menu, and I go to a document which I was fortunate to find as a manuscript called The Rhodesian Jury and Its Story, written by what's his name? Gosh, it's just gone a blank. Eric Rosenthal, I'm sorry. It was written by Eric Rosenthal in the 60s, a well-known historian. This document was never published, and I managed to get a copy of the manuscript. But another little tip I would give, another little recommendation I would give to anybody who wants to create this kind of online digitized documents is to make sure that the PDFs are searchable. So if I go to a PDF of this file and I look for, and then I just do a Control F to search within the document, if I again type in the word Cohen, I can, or I should be able to, sorry, it's not, I need to look at it at the Adobe level. I won't bother you with it now, but basically any PDF on the website should also be searchable. And believe me, it works. So if I'm looking for anything within this document that's supposedly a closed PDF, I would recommend you make it searchable. That's a facility when you make a PDF. So again, these are just little tips which I've learned, and I'm happy to share with people on how I the sort of the methodology I use for building my website. One of the latest projects I've done, which is I've been quite a lot of fun, is creating what I call it's a geolocation of homes in Harare and Bulawayo. So I've built using Google Earth, I've built a map of Harare and Bulawayo with the homes of Jewish families. And you can then click on that particular family and see who was the family, where they lived, the members of the family, what period they lived at that house. And I think it's another beginning of telling the story of the community, and I'm hoping that this will stimulate people to actually write their family histories, which is another important part of the website. So I've got in the family section, the family menu, I've got many family stories which I've collected over the years. And I'm always looking for ways in which to stimulate people to write their families, but it's not just written. I'm also proud to say that I've managed to produce a number of video recordings of people telling the story of their life in Zimbabwe. It's both on the website. If you're looking here, you can see a number of them that are on the website, but I also have a YouTube channel as an extension. I have about 60 videos on this YouTube channel, again, of people talking about their life in Zimbabwe. That's just another way in which you can tell the story. I've done interviews over Skype. These days one can do it remotely. There's someone with a microphone open. I would ask if they could close, please. So again, YouTube is a platform, a very, very powerful and very useful platform, especially when you're talking about storage issues of a lot of material. Videos are very heavy and can consume a lot of storage space. So that's a combining of my video recordings and interviews together with YouTube. I mentioned the cemeteries. The other thing which I did just a couple of months ago is I organized a Zoom reunion of the Zimbabwe Jewish community. We had over 300 people attending, and this was a wonderful get-together of, as you know, our community is dispersed around the world, and this is a recording of that, nearly 2 hours of that reunion, which included just over an hour of presentations by 3 people, which gives some really interesting dimensions to the story of the Zimbabwe Jewish community. So again, Zoom has become a very powerful platform for both sharing, creating a sense of community, and recording people's stories, because within that 2 hours there were a lot of stories that were shared. The other element I'm wary of, that I've got 15 minutes to tell you about this project. It's been running for 20 years. The other important development was I think about 12 years ago, I started a private Zimbabwe Jewish community Facebook group. And this has become an incredibly powerful and useful tool to both, as I say, create community and collect material from our members. I have 2,600 members on this group. It's a private group. You have to answer a few questions in order to enter the group. And you know, moderating the group takes a bit of time. I check it normally at least once a day. But it's an incredibly powerful mechanism. I'll show you some examples of how people take their own pictures, their own stories, and post them without me having to really be physically or technically involved, I now have a repository on this Facebook group of literally hundreds of pictures and stories and people responding to all sorts of stories about the community. Really, some wonderful material. If I show you on the videos on the media side, just to give an example, I mean, there are people who post pictures which I have to sometimes clean up, but there is some, it's what I call a hatch, match and dispatch sort of platform where people can advise on weddings, on births and deaths. It's a very, very useful platform for people to, I call it a self-help kind of platform for people to share stories about the Zimbabwe Jewish community. So between the actual website, the Facebook, and by the way, on the Facebook, I just want to show you, one of the nice things about Facebook is that you really get an idea of who your audience is. I've got statistics here on the age and gender of the 2,600 people in my group. I know what countries and cities they're from, and I can get a real sense of where people are located, and again, what would interest them. I can look at statistics within the Facebook on what kind of posts really interest them. So that's like a whistle-stop kind of tour of the group of the four main elements of the platforms that I use: the Zoom, the website, the Facebook, and the YouTube. Just briefly, other aspects of the website, if I go back to it, I have a lot of photo albums. These are historical photo albums. You can see the technology is not very sophisticated, but it's telling a story, and there's some interesting elements of photographs here. Under history, I mentioned the book by Eric Rosenthal, but I have other. If I go to Zionism under the website, I have scanned what was the CHOL magazine, the Central African Zionist Organization magazine, which ran for about just over 25 years in Zimbabwe, which is an incredible source of records of what happened in the community during that period. And there, all the magazines have been scanned and are on the website. You can see them as images here, and can be looked at. So that's kind of like a, again, I'm aware that there are other speakers ahead of me, and I don't want to take up too much more time, and I hope there'll be more questions from you at the end in the Q&A. And Adam, I'm going to hand back to, I don't know what order.
On to Eric next.
I'll pass on to Eric, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Just, Eric, before you start, Vernon Katz, your mic is on. Why don't you please just mute yourself? Thank you very much. And then over to you, Eric.
Okay, Eric, you are now the host.
Great, thank you. Just want to share screen, if I may. Okay, so thank you. My name is Eric Berger, as introduced, Executive Director of the Cape Town Jewish Cemeteries Maintenance Board, CMB for short. Also the Executive Director of the Union of Orthodox Synagogues and the United Chevra Gadisha in Cape Town. So just to give you a background to the cemetery website, how it was created, the purpose it serves, and the functions it forms today. So the CMB was formed about 15 years ago in about 2006 to take charge of the maintenance of the Cape Town cemeteries. The cemeteries and the burial grounds are allocated by the city to the various faith groups, and as the land belongs to the city, they are ultimately responsible to maintain and secure these sites. But at that stage, it became increasingly obvious that the city didn't have the funds or the manpower to maintain any of the cities properly within the Cape Town metropole. So the Jewish community started a fundraising campaign to ensure that the Jewish cemetery should be a secure, quiet place to reflect and feel comforted when visiting the graves of family and friends who have departed this world. And so the CMB was formed, and it includes members from across the Cape Town Jewish community and is guided by its own constitution committee and is chaired by Mr. Sam Galansky. The CMB is totally dependent on the support of the community to maintain the 6 cemeteries within the Cape Town area. So let's go through the cemeteries, if I can, just briefly. Can't get rid of this. Okay. So the first cemetery is the Old Woodstock Cemetery on Albert Road. It's a heritage site. Property actually belongs to the Cape Town Hebrew congregation, Garden Shul, and is the only private cemetery within the Cape Town. Included it because it forms part of our maintenance program, but the details are not included on the site. As it's a heritage site, any work that's done there, any repair work that's needed to be done, obviously has to be carefully monitored and be approved by the Heritage Foundation. The cemetery hasn't been used for over 100 years, and there are 49 graves in the site. The next cemetery, second one, is the small cemetery at 7th Avenue in Maitland. It remains locked at this stage, but it is visited, and it can be visited by prior arrangement. There are often vagrants in the cemeteries, and they vandalize the tombstones. Recently, we've made several improvements to this area to keep it safe and clean. There are 1,141 graves in this cemetery. You can see at the top there, that's the Voortrekker Road on the Maitland. On the opposite side of the road is the big Maitland Cemetery. The third cemetery is the Jewish allotment at Gate 8 in the large Maitland Cemetery. The cemetery is a constant problem with vandals. The wall separating the Jewish cemetery and the general burial area was stolen, so we since planted a hedge to keep a separation between the two areas. This has worked fairly well. There have been burials in the cemetery recently, but not for a while. There are 2,560 graves within this area, the Maitland Cemetery. So you see wide aisles, very big. The fourth cemetery is the one towards the end of Prince George Drive in Muizenberg. Unfortunately, the cemetery is right next to a squatter camp, and there's been an enormous amount of vandalism and destruction at the cemetery. Several years ago, we had a major fundraising drive to secure and clean up their cemetery, and we were kindly assisted by interested parties who had loved ones buried in the Muizenberg Cemetery to help with our fundraising efforts. The area today is well secured and maintained on a regular basis. There are 891 graves in the Muizenberg Cemetery, and just recently been used as well. Sorry, gloomy day, but that's there was a Tahara house here, which was removed, and just a paved area put here to bring the hearse in. All the preparation is done at Pinelands number 2. The fifth cemetery is Pinelands number 1. This is a large cemetery, well laid out, and is still used on a regular basis, mostly for burials in reserved graves of surviving spouses who have now passed away. There's 7,542 graves in Pinelands number 1. Also very well laid out, in nice order. It's across the road from Pinelands number 2. And this brings me to the sixth cemetery, Pinelands number 2, which I'm all sure you're very familiar with. This is the cemetery that we are using for most of all burials today, where most of the maintenance efforts and costs are focused and have been for the past few years. There are 10,771 buried in the cemetery at this stage. The total numbers of it for all the burials in Cape Town are 22,974 to date. The entrance and forecourt was completely redone and beautifully landscaped. You can see this is the entrance and the gate. Many generous donors of the community came forward to help to insist in this major upgrade. We've also completed before COVID an upgrade to the Tahara house in front of you here, and particularly the mourners' room, used by the mourners before the funeral, and which included a washroom facility. This renovation upgrade also included renovations to the behind the scenes, where the undertakers prepare the bodies for burial. The CMB employs a cemetery manager, Mr. Jeff Musikanth, who is responsible for all the cemeteries within the Cape Town area. The 8 groundsmen who focus their time on the Pioneers No. 2 cemetery. The maintenance of the other cemeteries has now been outsourced. This has helped to reduce costs, but the manager still coordinates and monitors all the cemeteries. That's a brief view of cemeteries. And then we'll just close this. Just give me a moment. I want to just share screen again. Sorry, I can't get to. Can you see the website open? Okay, so this is the front page of the website. And just to give you a brief background as to how this developed. The project of recording the graves, the Cape Town graves, goes back some years, certainly before I started in 2009. And all the gravestones, certainly from the older tombstones in the older cemeteries, were photographed. Many were illegible, and we had to get details from the city burial records to get the correct information up onto the database. So when it started in 2009, this project was well underway, with many of the gravestones being captured. But the need for funding for this and for maintaining the cemetery grounds became a pressing need. So we're very grateful for people who came forward to help with the project, particularly this particular project in terms of getting the website up and running, Mr. Marco van Emden, and of course, the chairman of the CMB, Mr. Sam Galancy, for both their enthusiasm and drive. So we sent out mailers to every member in the community to help with the fundraising efforts, and these were fairly successful. And then, of course, the aha moment. What do we do to get it out there? So how to connect and gain support from people living overseas with their loved ones buried in Cape Town. So we had to rethink our fundraising strategy, because ultimately the whole purpose is a fundraising strategy, because the only support to maintain the cemeteries is through donations. So we were extremely fortunate to have very many talented people within Cape Town and overseas who came forward with ideas. And that is how the Cape Town Jewish Cemetery Maintenance Board website was born, pun intended there. We originally called it Goodle Pinelands, and I'll put the email address, the web address on when I've finished my talk onto the chat. But it is www.jewishcemetery.co.za. Took a long time to decide on what name to choose, but we wanted to be quite generic, because we anticipated going forward not just the Cape Town cemeteries, but perhaps moving into the Western Cape as well. But at this stage, it's only the Cape Town cemeteries. So essentially, the website was created as a fundraiser to maintain the cemeteries. But the big question then was to how to promote it locally, nationally, and internationally. So initially it was limited, but as you can see, this is as it looks today, and it's evolved quite considerably. And we needed to gain access to people living outside Cape Town and abroad to view the graves of their bobbers and zadas, their parents and friends. So we went on a major advertising campaign to promote the website in local newspapers, and overseas in the Cape Jewish Chronicle, in Johannesburg, in local Jewish publications in Australia, the UK, and the USA. We advertised through Telfed to ex-Cape Townians living in Israel. And we sent out flyers to the community, placed attendance registers at all funerals, which is still done today, asking people to record their attendance at the funeral and include the email addresses. These pages today as well are bound and then sent to the family, and then they can see a record or have a record of who attended the funeral. All these avenues were successful in insisting with us, connecting with family and friends of those buried in the cemeteries. Over time, the site has completely evolved. More people wanted to be connected by leaving a message on their loved one's page. And also there were queries and correspondence which came in, which allowed further connection with people visiting the site. This in turn helped by advertising and promoting the site to others. And then of course, many more people wanted reminders of yahrzeit dates. So they can just read through, and I'll go through an interaction with you because it's very user-friendly. This website was designed by the Jewish Cemetery Maintenance Board to pay tribute to the loved ones that are no longer with us, search for a deceased and interact by placing a stone on the deceased's tombstone, buying a leaf on the deceased's tree of life, writing on the deceased memorial wall. Jewish Cemetery Maintenance Board, CMB, is responsible for maintaining all 5 cemeteries in the Cape Town Peninsula. We rely solely on donations to look after our cemeteries. So as I say, this is a fundraiser initially, and there gives you the monthly contributions, and as it builds up, but it's become much more interactive, and people wanted information out there. So down the one side are all the people who've made donations within the month. On the opposite side are recent funerals, and each one is clickable. So you can go to the person's homepage, date of funeral, which cemetery, and the time of the funeral, recent posts on memorial walls, if there have been photographs uploaded onto the site of each deceased. Consecration is obviously not being held at the moment, so that's blank. If there are, they would be posted here, but because of COVID regulations, we're not permitted to do that. And then, of course, your site notifications. All those for the week are listed here, again, with the deceased, and you could click onto that and go to their homepage. At the bottom is a notification for funerals. Baruch Hashem, there are no funerals taking place today or in the next 2 days, but once those have taken place, they move to the top and are placed here. So you can see the recent ones were 10th of August was the latest one that was done. So just to go through briefly, as you said in your own talk earlier, Dave, search. Well, this is, I'll just bring you into our own family one. It just makes it easier just to give you an idea how it works and how easily interactive it is. Search, it'll bring you to similar names or those who are on the site. Click on the person who you want to visit, and it'll open up their home page. There's the home page, my mother's name, a Hebrew name, yahrzeit date and corresponding English date, details of where she's buried, date of death, an English corresponding date, date of burial, invariably not the same, but my mother was buried on the same date. We'll give you the corresponding dates. Picture of the tombstone, messages on the memorial wall, and if you want to make a contribution to the Tree of Life, each are all clickable. And this one I've already done just to give you an example. You can roll over the stone, somebody's visited the grave, so you can just see, placed by Eric Berger. If you want to, all that's here, right on the wall. It will bring you onto her page. I'll just give you an idea of buying a leaf. You click on the leaf, and it'll take you to the payment portal, filling in the name, your email address. You can buy for a year, 2 years, lifetime. You can keep anonymous, buy the leaf, and you go through the details of that. And then just go back to the home page. You can choose it on any person you like, completely interactive and user-friendly. Have problems? Contact us. Contact us. You can do it on her page. You can do it on the home page. It'll bring up the contact details. That's my email address if you want to email me directly, or you can put it on here, put your email in, submit, and it'll come to the back end. And as best as possible, we can answer your queries. The same with subscriptions, that if you're not registered, you'd put in your email address and it would register you to receive the newsletter. And then once that's been done, you'd re-register, and it would open up portal for you to receive different notifications, like the funeral notifications, which has become increasingly popular over the last couple of years. For obvious reasons, the newspapers are not able to publish them anymore. People don't use the newspapers. So to navigate that we open that to people to send out subscriptions for that, and you can put that in. We have many people who have asked for the notifications. CHOLs basically only send notifications of funerals to their members. So for the general community, if you need it, this would come out from this website, but you do need to connect to it. The whole purpose, again, as I said, of the website is to connect so we can get donations in whichever possible way. And as I said, it's as user-friendly as possible. Just to give you some statistics, there are nearly 8,878 newsletters sent out on a monthly basis, and that's nationally and internationally. There are 6,018 Yortside notifications registered, and there are nearly 1,300 people receiving funeral notifications. So that's really the basis of the website, as I said, as user-friendly as possible. And the whole object of that, of course, is to bring in donations to sustain the community, that it's not a drain otherwise. We are very fortunate. Locally, we work through Pay Fast, and internationally work through PayPal, and we have to clear those donations. We have been very fortunate. People have been very generous, and we look forward to you making donations accordingly. Thank you. That's the story of the website and how it evolves, and it will probably evolve as it goes forward, as the need requires and people need more information that we're able to supply them.
Thank you, Eric. Can you pass the host duties to Katie? And Katie, over to you.
Thank you.
Just give me a moment to find you. Can't actually find you here, I'm sorry. Do apologize.
A long list.
It is a long,
Can you
at the top somewhere.
search on the participant?
Still then, I'm sorry. Here we go. Sorry, apologies. Done.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, cool. So I am going to share my screen now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Kaplan Centre Archive, who we are, what we do, our associated online resources, and as Adam mentioned, the Jewish Living Archive, which is Kaplan Centre Archives in the physical, SAJAM Archives in the digital, and how they speak to each other. So now we go about the sharing portion, share screen. Okay. Right, so. Okay, is this all visible to everybody? Sorry. Can everybody hear me? Sorry. Okay, cool. So basically the Kaplan Centre Archives comprises the Jewish-related collections held at the University of Cape Town. They form part of the larger UCT archives. However, they are stored at the Kaplan Centre, where we have our temperature-controlled, recently built archive. They make up around 180 collections that include congregational archives, personal papers, composite projects, and organizational collections. I'm going to show you a little bit. First, I'm going to show you, we've created a list of the exact collections, which you can find on the Kaplan Centre website. Under research resources, you can find archival research queries. Here, we have added a list of the exact collections held at the Kaplan Centre in this PDF document here, so you can see exactly what we have there. This is one way that you can have a look at what we've got. Another way is to look at the University of Cape Town's Finding Aid. What this is it's a resource where you can search the collections in the entirety of the University of Cape Town's archives, and those include ours as well. So what you can do here is you can browse by keywords, and it gives you inventory lists of what is actually available in our physical archive. So, for instance, one example of how you could go about this is very much the way JP, who presented last week, discussed the Woodstock project. When he was when he wanted to add materials that we have in the Kaplan Centre archive to this digital project, he had a look at this finding aid site and he typed in words such as Woodstock. You add congregation to narrow the search, because the greater archives at UCT focus a lot on the Western Cape. The term Woodstock is going to come up a lot. There's a lot of materials around Woodstock. You add Woodstock congregation or Woodstock Hebrew or Woodstock Jewish to narrow your search. So what he would have done is he would have searched through here. Then we see all the instances that the Woodstock congregation comes up. You could then go to that page. For instance, here there's some Woodstock materials in the Cape Town Hebrew congregation page. So what he did is he went through here, found very interesting materials that he thought should be added. Then he contacted me, said, please, can you have a look? Can you scan and can we add these? This is one of the ways you can go about accessing the Kaplan Centre archives and the Greater UCT archives. They speak to each other a lot, because although something's Jewish related, it's also World War II, it's also Southern African history, all these kinds of things. So this is one of the places that you can search to see what we have. I want to give you another example of the kind of request I get very often. And these kinds of requests pertain to personal documents. So as an example, and this I get very often, but it was one of the most recent ones, a gentleman in Joburg's daughter has just moved to Amsterdam and wants to join a CHOL. So now she needs documentation of where her parents got married. So this gentleman used this UCT finding aid and he searched and he knew he got married at the Skunda Street CHOL. There he looked, what do we have in here? He went through to see, okay, membership. Sometimes these are called, sometimes personal records will show up as memberships, sometimes they'll show up as registers. He clicked on that to see if perhaps we have marriage registers and would we perhaps have his ketubah that he could perhaps get me to scan. I send it to him, he sends it to his daughter, she joins his congregation. So he went down here. And we were lucky enough to be able to find his date range, and I could scan and send him his ketubah. We have a fair amount of these kinds of registers. Death registers, birth certificates, you can see here, those are less common. Marriage registers are slightly more common, but none of our congregational collections are entirely complete. So in order to see whether it's the kind of thing we would have, either you would contact me and ask me to have a look, or you would go to this UCT site and you would pop in name of a congregation, or you could pop in marriage or registers, and then we can take it from there. I will make sure my last slide will include the email addresses you can use, and also all these sites I'm going through. I'd recommend that you screenshot that, and also we can share it afterwards, because as you'll see, there are multiple online sites connected to what we do at the Kaplan Centre archive and the Jewish Living archive. Right, next I would like to talk about the South African, the SA Jewish Roots Bank. This is a site that is used very often. Saul Issoff was instrumental in starting this project. It was before my time, but a lot of the requests I get from community researchers relate to this site. This site tracks migration to South Africa, and it documents events such as you'll see on the left here: births, cemeteries, deaths and estates, marriages, military records, that kind of thing. This site doesn't hold any digital records. It doesn't hold any records that you can download and use yourself. It was also very much constructed from listings that were given to the project from congregations, from other projects, from organizations, and these are entries. Basically, I've shown you the sections on the side here, and the way you search, we talk about searching a lot, because you don't want to scroll through lots of listings. The search function on the Jewish Roots Bank, again, I will share a slide of all these with all these addresses. This is where you would search, and you search by name. So if I just click here, you can see all the searches I've done. A person has gotten hold of me and said, oh, you know, I'm looking for this person's name, and then I can recommend to them that you search here, search using all variations of a last name, and then you can see what comes up under the different sections. It's very important to note here, and I would recommend that you always, whenever you start using a database, you read the about and the how-to very carefully. This includes a note that we've added, which alerts users to the fact that we don't hold at the Kaplan Centre archive majority of the records you'll see on this database. So what we do hold, and which we can help people out with a lot, and this comes very much in handy for people, is the passenger arrival section. Okay, so if you're looking for actual physical documents and where are they held, this is the section you're going to be looking at. Passenger arrivals. There, the ones that we hold at the Kaplan Centre fall into 4 registers that were kept by the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, and we have them in our South African Jewish Board of Deputies archive. The date range that we have, unfortunately, is limited. It's from 1924 to 1929, and these are the arrivals lists. These registers have full names and last names. They have ship names, they have dates. They were often written in pencil, so people expect them to be these beautiful big registers, and they're actually just little lined books. But they're incredibly valuable to a lot of people who are tracking migration, who are looking, for all sorts of genealogical reasons, that kind of thing. So you can search your name, and then you can see. I'm trying to remember if Immerman did come up. Yep. So this is one of the, this came up because it's probably one of the most recent that I found that someone was looking for. I could then go to the register and I could scan this original document and send it to them for whatever they need to use it for. So it's just an important note that if you are using this, there's lots of, we've just spoken about cemeteries, and here there are many cemetery lists. Veronica Belling brought up in the chat that updating a lot of these facilities is ongoing, and it isn't as simple as adding an entry here or there. Saul can maybe speak to this at some point later in our next series, but basically we receive listings from cemeteries and then there's a process to add them. We do often get emails from people saying that something's missing, and this we're aware of, and we are seeing to this. So that is the Jewish Roots Bank, a very useful resource. And next I would like to talk a little bit about the Jewish Living Archive and what this is. So the Jewish Living Archive comprises the physical materials held at the Kaplan Centre and the digital materials online at the South African Jewish Museum Archives. So these speak to each other, their history is interwoven. The institutions of the Kaplan Centre and the South African Museum are sister institutions. And what has happened is that a lot of materials physically available at Kaplan have related materials available on SAJM Archives and vice versa. So it is our job to alert, oh, did I stop sharing my screen? What did I do? Is my screen still sharing? There we go. So, sorry, can everyone still see my screen?
Well, at the moment,
Sorry.
Yeah, we've
Share
lost your
screen.
screen. There you go. It's back again.
Sorry, there we go. Sorry, my internet's really strange. So basically, I was talking about how the two speak to each other, right? This is the SAJM Archives homepage. Layla spoke a little bit about this right in the beginning. And it's important for us to explain to and signal to people that something available digitally here there might be something similar or related at the Kaplan Centre, vice versa. So constantly thinking about how to do this in a digital, user-friendly way. Luckily, the first resource I showed you, which is the UCT Finding Aid site, where you are able to see inventories of the types of collections we have, uses the same software, which is called ATOM, Access to Memory. It's an archival software. It's the same as the one we use for South African Jewish Museum Archives. It's important that archives, libraries, organizations, education institutes try to use the same or interoperable systems so that they can speak to each other. One of the ways we are trying to signal to people when something they see on SAJM Archives, related materials available at the Kaplan Centre, is, for example, what we have done with the Abe Mervish collection, which I will take you to here. So, search functions, as always, they're browse options. We use search functions, simpler, but then you also need to know what you're looking for. So, browsing, searching, we do what we need to. Okay, the Abe Mervish collection that we have online includes photograph documents and videos. It's a comprehensive collection. We've got incredible photographs and a lot of personal documents. What we have done here is, knowing that the person that donated this collection had donated as well a large amount of materials in physical form to the Kaplan Centre, I was able to have a look, see what we have at the Kaplan Centre that might be interesting to a user looking at this Abe Mervish collection. What we found in the UCT Finding Aid was that there is an interview at the Kaplan Centre with Abe Mervish. There are the Rabbi Mervish papers, and there's also the Israel Mervish papers. What we're able to do, because the software is the same, is that we can link across. So basically, there's a related materials section here. I can click, and it'll take me straight to the university's Finding Aid, exactly to the metadata section where this interview is, a little bit of information about it. The interview's not online, but you can contact me. Once again, I'll add a slide with all the email addresses and websites. You can get hold of me and you can get access to this. I'll show you one more, but I think I should have opened that in a new tab. There we go, we go back. And those, they're all clickable, and you can go and you can see what we got there. You can contact me. You can say, well, I'm very interested in this and that. Do you have time? Can we check when you can scan it and send it to me? So those are the ways in which we are trying to link the archive, the digital and the physical, in a way that the user can find in one place. Lastly, I would just like to talk a little bit about one of the other queries I get quite often. What we get quite often in the Jewish Living Archive is the question of donation. How do you donate to the archive? How do you donate to the Kaplan Centre Physical Archive? How do you donate to the SA Jewish Museum Archives? So in terms of the Kaplan Centre Archives, we fall under the University of Cape Town's Greater Archives, and therefore we follow a collection development policy that was developed by the university and that we have entered into. This means that when someone contacts me or Adam and they believe they've got a physical collection that they think should be preserved in perpetuity, they want to hand over copyrights held in trust in our archive, We go through a mandate where we contact executives and we present to them and we say, this should be part of our collection, and that's the process for that. Once again, you'll be able to find my email address, and then people can contact me about that. In terms of SAJM Archives, it's a little bit different. And because you are not handing over physical materials, you are giving us co-copyright for a digital copy of your materials. So what we do there is a person can contact us and say that they would like they would like their collection to be put online, and they would like to assign us co-copyright. Why must this be difficult now? There we go. Yes? Sorry, maybe this is a biggish file. I just want to show you the donation pack. What we've developed to help, to empower potential donors to SAJM Archives is a step-by-step guide that explains to you how to digitize and submit your materials to SAJM Archives in a user-friendly way, in which you hold a copy of your digitized materials, which we know is important. We know that physical collections in the exact situation can degrade. So it's worth having a selection, a copy of your own, and then a copy that you submit to us that we put online and we save. So basically, it's a step-by-step guide. Once again, contact us for this donation pack, and explains in a step-by-step way exactly how you can digitize your own physical collection so that you have it and we have it, and we can both preserve it for the future. That's basically the donation for both archives. Lastly, I would like to, I don't know why this is being okay. I just want to make sure that everyone takes the opportunity to screen grab or save the online resources I've gone through. The archival research inquiries, which has all the information around the Jewish Roots Bank passenger arrivals, the details on how you would get hold of me and request a scan. Also the finding aid that we spoke about at UCT, the Jewish Roots Bank with all the migration information, and SAJM Archives, which forms part of our Jewish Living Archive. These are the email addresses. Please keep them handy and be in touch, and I'm here and very keen on any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you to all three speakers. Appreciate it. So we have time now for the questions from our audience and discussion. I'm going to start off with a question of my own to everyone, because it's to Eric, to Katie, and to Dave, which relates to engagement, because you all are speaking about engaging with very different audiences. My question to each of you is, who are your users? I mean, who are you engaging with? What do you know, Dave, for example, about the people who are members who participate in this virtual community that you've created? What are their backgrounds? Is there a specific typical type of art? Where are they're located, and things of that kind? To Eric, the same sort of question. So who are the people that you're engaging with? Clearly keeping very interesting records about participation, about donations and otherwise, but how has it expanded the reach of the cemetery sport? Katie, the same question to you about who are the people who are using these resources, and what sort of queries they typically bring to you. So let's start off. We can run this in order. If we start off with Dave, and then Eric, and then Katie.
So I think I gave an example of my my Facebook group when I showed you the gender breakdown and the demographic breakdown and the age group background. The vast majority of my audience, I would say, are probably the demographic of 60 and above. I would say we do have a number of audience in the younger community, but I would say typically the whole thing of looking back and genealogy tends to, maybe the others will confirm, but it tends to sort of trigger or happen for many people in their later years when they're sort of looking to start, to sort of maybe summarize or even collect material of their legacy. So that's typically my audience. But I do have, I would say, quite a number of younger people who are also involved for all sorts of reasons. Facebook has people push back on Facebook and they say it's very intrusive, and I've tried to keep it, as I said, a private Facebook group. Try to keep it tight, and I have to moderate it from time to time to make sure that people keep focused on the subject, because people tend to post all sorts of other stuff. But in terms of getting the audience, it is people who are aware of social media, because the website, there's just so much I can do as a single. I don't have the budget of the Kaplan Centre, but I have just my spare time to be able to update the website. That's what I love about the social media aspect of how I collect and create that community.
Thank you. Eric?
Okay, so you really want to know how we created the database. It was quite interesting, because I think time just evolved that one. As much as one would have liked to say everybody in Cape Town wanted to be part of it and it was the way to go, it didn't actually work that way. There is a fair amount of resistance for people sharing information even today. But as I say, it evolved because people needed to know what was going on. And now, particularly, certainly in the last 2 or 3 years, where things have completely turned upside down, the website has become the information center. So it's really completely changed, from where people were fairly resistant to give details. They're now quite happy to connect, because they can get, as I said, in particularly the Yortside dates out, they can get out a funeral notifications, even though they can't attend, at least they know who the people are. And it goes across the board. I mean, you wanted an age demographic. It's not really, obviously very much the younger people are not that connected, but anybody who's within the mid-teens upwards is connected, because they want to know. And unfortunately, things have not been easy for the Cape Town community, certainly in December, January, February, when there was an enormous spike in deaths and that. So people did connect even more so. And it's really crossed that divide very successfully. And we hope it grows, because it's a great information center. We can't tick all those boxes. I think what the Kaplan Centre does, I mean, what is listening to Catherine's, I mean, wow, it's just remarkable. But there's no way we could do that on our basis. Ours is much more limited. And of course, it's dependent on the information that you get in. I saw on the one chat that person asked, they're looking for a grave of, but it depends how it's recorded. They might have typed it in as Jacob, and we might have recorded as Yaakov or Jakes, So but if you send us the details on the chat we'll find it for you. If we can't find it on our own, we'll go through to the city records and find it. So there's always a way of finding it if it's on record. But as I said, I think we've all discovered that it's evolved enormously, and it's evolving much faster than we anticipated. Certainly from when we started 12 or 13 years ago, it was purely just to gather information so you can get donations. Now that's obviously the primary reason for the website, but it's so much more. It's now giving out information that people want because they need that connectivity.
Thank you, Eric. And Katie.
Okay, so in terms of the types of requests and the types of people that access us, we get academic researchers and community researchers, genealogical researchers, passport seekers, kind of in equal amounts. Requests every day. and non-Jewish community member requests, because, like I said, our collections span so many subjects and topics. So we get a bit of each. For example, that Ketubah request I got, that's very common. Like JP, a researcher creating a project, which was a great example of someone who had taken the site and used it to its absolute maximum. Commend JP on the stuff we found for this. Sorry, I have to hop back to it, but it's because it's an exciting project and the kind of things we found, digging deep in boxes. It's part of it, you know. Unfortunately, it takes work to use these sites. You know, it's taken me years to properly be able to use all these sites, and it's difficult. You know, things can be user friendly to a certain extent, and search functions can be user friendly to a certain extent. You just have to trial and error. Please read the pages. Please read everything the websites say. But we get a bit of everything. It's exciting. You never know what you're going to get. And adds to my institutional knowledge. Every time someone asks me about something, I learn a little bit more about a collection. So we get something new and exciting every day from a range of people, a demographic, younger, older, everyone. Sorry. I also would like to at some point just speak a little bit about the fire and the salvage project, just because two people have mentioned that. So whenever.
I was going to suggest exactly that.
Okay. So I didn't.
I'll just provide a little bit of background for those, perhaps anyone who doesn't know. There was a sort of significant fire on the UCT campus. Now feels like about how many months ago? 6 months ago or so, that with damage to one of the libraries. But Katie, go on.
Yes, so it was a bushfire. Cape Townians know, most people know, it was a big story nationally. The head of archives at Special Collections says it's the most hits they've ever gotten to their Facebook pages and websites. It was when the library burned down. So the Special Collections Jagger Library literally burned down. We spent 5-6 weeks pulling crates and crates of materials out. So we got emails left and right from people asking how our collections were. We are very lucky and very grateful and relieved that our collections sit in the Kaplan Centre, which is all the way on the other side of campus. Because of COVID, for better or worse, our materials had not been in the reading room, which is where a lot of people before COVID would access our physical materials. The process is that we take them over, whatever someone's requested to look at, we'd take them over to the reading room, which no longer exists, and there you'd be able to go through them under the supervision of archivists and librarians. Because of COVID, our materials had not been moved over there. So we were actually really lucky. During the salvage project, I was in the reserve shelves, which are no longer reserve shelves. It was just charcoal and we were wearing hard hats. And I looked at the remains there, and basically any boxes that related to any of our collections were untouched. There were very, very small amount, 3 or 4 boxes, which have been taken to triage, the little book hospital. They're in cold storage just to be looked over. But we are extremely lucky that basically nothing of ours was affected. Obviously, on the whole, as our collections all speak to each other, it was devastating across the board. As an archivist and a librarian, it's heartbreaking. Everyone's still in shock, and the process now is basically moving all these thousands and thousands of crates that were salvaged to new premises to put the puzzle back together. It's all happening, and largely I think we're very lucky and grateful at the amount that survived. So there's a lot of hope in terms of that. But our lovely, safe little collections are completely fine. So that's that story.
Thank you, Katie. A number of questions have been posed in the chat function. If anyone would like to ask their question directly, just please put up your hands, and I'm very happy to hear from you as opposed to me relaying your questions. There's an important question here, or point here made by Helen, saying that is there an effort to coordinate these various projects in a way? That's of course what these workshops are all about, is to begin, and all credit to Eli and to Geraldine for identifying this need, and also identifying this explosion of innovative projects of various kinds, working to develop community histories online. And this is really the first step in this process, both to identify projects, to connect people, and hopefully, in fact, the element which I've been pushing, Helen, is very much as suggesting, is perhaps to create a portal, a place which at least has a listing of projects, and perhaps also begins to think about preservation of material as well, preservation of digital material. That we saw, Dave, your wonderful material that you have up on your site, but also on Facebook and on YouTube, and to think about how we save that material so that one day, it's difficult to imagine a future without Facebook and YouTube at the moment, but one day when there is a future without Facebook and YouTube, or we move on to something else, how do we save and preserve this material? So I think that, again, this is designed as the beginning of a process of thinking about these questions. Geraldine, please go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, to say, been delighted to listen to all three speakers. It's so enlightening. The internet has given us so many opportunities to do amazing things, and very special for me, as I say, to connect with Dave, because he was my role model in wanting to start a website for Kimberley in the first place. And having discovered the cemeteries website, trying to do Kimberley. I'm sitting in London, my parents and grandparents are buried in Kimberley. I'd like to visit the grave, and all I hear from Kimberley is, please send us money, we have to build the wall again, But, I think Eric has got something very special that all communities might want, and I don't know whether he's thinking of some way of patenting it and selling the template again for fundraising for Cape Town, but people would be willing to pay something to be able to use this template for their own cemeteries. But the question that I wanted to ask Eric was, is there any reason why you don't put the date of birth of the people? Because to me, that's the one thing that's missing on this website. You've got the date of death, the date of burial, every possible other thing, except the most important thing is the date of birth.
Okay, so that is actually quite an amusing question you ask. Initially, we were asked to put it on, and we kind of debated whether we should or we shouldn't. And we thought we'd rather just put on the essential information in terms of the deceased. But it is a certain thing, there is a field to add the date of birth anyway. I think it's there already. And if I'm not mistaken, it's been added. It just doesn't appear on the site, but we can do that. What happened previously, we weren't always given accurate information from the families in terms of their birth, their ID documents and that, which today is essential. They have to give it to us because we can't register the death without proof of the identification. So you can pick the ID number up. So certainly a lot of the previous graves that were loaded don't have that information on, but certainly the ones going forward, we can put it on, and I'll research that to see how we can actually have the date of birth displayed. I'm not sure, if I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I'm not sure everybody would be happy to know at what age they were when they died, and that, I mean, that's a political question that might be a little bit sensitive, but anyway.
I think you can't be sensitive once you've died. Most people's graves say they died on such and such a date at 74 years, and then you've got to sit there calculating it yourself. So it just will be so much easier if it's there. I think you've got to try and get people not to be sensitive about it.
Not a problem, yeah. You have no idea the complaints that come through in the queries. It's quite amusing, however. I'm sure Katie can attest to that when people ask you unusual questions.
So is this something that you could think about sharing at some stage?
Yes, for sure. No, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think it's a complicated or difficult thing to do at all.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Geraldine, and thanks, Eric. Veronica, you have a question. that you are muted.
Yes, I've just unmuted myself. Yeah, there were two questions related to the fire. The one was actually asking a question that I saw in the chat by Jean-Paul Berger, who was my successor as librarian at the Kaplan Centre. And he spoke about the duplicate Jewish related books that were in African studies. That was the area that was affected by the fire. And I am at the moment searching for the early Jewish books, some of which are not necessarily were Kaplan Centre books because they long predated it. And they all seem to be, say, destroyed in the fire. In most cases, there seem to be other copies in other parts of the library. I don't know that, I haven't encountered anything, I don't think, which is completely unique, that was destroyed in the fire. But I know I got a fright the first time I saw destroyed in the fire. And, but now it's become, you know, just a normal thing, destroyed in the fire, destroyed in the fire. Okay, the other thing I wanted to bring to the attention was that there was a very important archival collection donated to UCT long before the Kaplan Centre came into existence in 1964, and that is the Morris Alexander collection. We always spoke of it as the flagship collection. It's the earliest collection, and it contains the records of the Cape Jewish Philanthropic Society that was established in 1859. Now, I don't know, we don't know yet how that was affected, not by the fire, but by the water. And I think we must bear that in mind and just actually at the moment hope for the best, because they haven't compiled any reports as far as those collections are concerned. But one mustn't forget that it's not only the collections of the Kaplan Centre, there were Jewish related collections long before the Kaplan Centre. So that was just a comment. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Veronica. There's another question, sort of again, specifically Kaplan Centre focused, and then we'll move on. There's some other questions which are broader. And this is about the geographical focus of the Kaplan Centre collections. It's a question from Eli about whether there's what is the representation of material from upcountry, from outside Cape Town and the Western Cape. So material from Johannesburg and then elsewhere. In part, you'll see we've sent, if you look at the chat, you can see the collections in the Kaplan Centre itself, which you can get a sense of what the geographical breakdown is. And they are Western Cape focused, without question. But I can, again, turn this to Katie to answer in a second. But I'd say the other important thing to remember is that there is a very significant collection at Bayachad. The Board of Deputies Archive has a lot of material. So another good place to look for material relating to the South African Jewish Committee, less easily available online. Now, Katie, do you want to speak a little bit about the nature of the collections?
So the geographical nature, we have a fair amount, obviously Western Cape focused, a lot of Cape Town, but a lot of Southern Africa. We do have some Zimbabwean. We have a fair amount of Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, Kimberley, absent. Actually, someone was just asking me about the Kimberley materials, and I could point them towards Geraldine's site. But a fair amount of a little bit of Joburg. I'm trying to think, not much Joburg. We've got a lot more Joburg-related materials in SAJM Archives. But we've got a basically, that's why I would recommend that we make that composite list of what we actually hold in the Kaplan Centre archives available, because in the congregational collections you'll be able to see what's covered, of the geographical nature of what is actually covered. more than I can just think about, you know, off the top of my head, really right now. I just wanted to quickly mention, Veronica, just in terms of the books, that's the thing, because I focus so much on the archives, and because we know a lot more about that. As you said, it'll take a while before a proper report is written. It'll take a long time before we know exactly what was uniquely destroyed in terms of the books, the rare books. But yeah, that's something that's going to come with time. And like you said, materials that were not accessioned through the Kaplan Centre, but through the university Jagger Library, that are Jewish related, but are not held by us. That'll all come with time, unfortunately, as we put the puzzle back together. It's heartbreaking to look at the catalogue online and see Lost in the Fire. It's heartbreaking every time I do it.
Thanks, Katie. I mean, what's also important, just a final point about the Kaplan Centre's collection, is that we also, as Katie pointed out, we continue to actively collect, whereas so for example, the Board of Deputies Archive, as far as I know, is not actively collecting materials. Again, as she described, there for digital material, there's a particular process, and likewise, there's a particular process for physical collections as well. I recognize we're running out of time. Ryan has made an interesting point or comment in the chat, which is worth reading, again, pointing towards the future. So how do we get more people to engage? How do we get more people to participate? How do we particularly get younger people to engage as well? And it's something, again, it's something which I suppose is the beginning of a conversation rather than the end of it. It's an important point and something to think about. That's Eric and Dave both described how participants tend to be somewhat older. How do we make community history engaging for younger audiences as well? David, I see you have a question. You are muted still.
Yeah. I'd like to ask Mr. Eric Berger 2 questions. Firstly, is there any way that the Jewish Cemetery Board, of which he is connected with, keep notes of Jewish people who have been cremated? I know this is a thing that Jews normally do not do, but there are a few people Jewish people who have been cremated. Are records kept of those people?
Okay, so it's not a religious site. I do say that up front. And we do record everything that we get information on. We don't always get the information about cremation, so we can't load that on. Those that we do get are loaded on.
Yeah, thank you. And the other question is, I live in Israel, and when I go onto the Jewish Cemetery website, it's completely different to the one you showed now, because all the donations are recorded in pound sterling.
Correct.
I mean, are there different websites for different countries?
No, it's purely the payment portal that does it. And the overseas portals are connected through PayPal, and they connected accordingly. So PayPal will either the USA come through US dollars, the UK come through pounds, Australia come through Australian dollars, and obviously Israel's connected to the UK, and that's why it does it. The South African one is done through PayFast, and that's all in rands. That's the only way it could be linked. It was quite a complicated process to get those payment portals opened, particularly the PayPal one, and that's the way they link it. It's the most secure one that we were aware of, and that's why we used it.
Yeah, I think that the pound sterling is a very, very clever way of raising substantial funds because of the exchange. I think
for our purposes, we're very delighted about the funds that come in, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Berger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're officially out of time, but thanks again very much to our three speakers, to Dave, to Eric, and to Katie. It's really fascinating presentations, and so again, exciting to see this sort of very different approaches adopted and all clearly very successful in different ways. So very much appreciated for your time and for sharing your work with us. And then my own thanks to add to those that Gavin began with at the start, that this is these workshops were, even though they were, have been hosted by the South African Jewish Museum, by the Kaplan Centre, really were driven by Geraldine and Eli, and we really appreciate both the initiative and all the thought and time and effort and energy which went into getting this off the ground. That the meetings, the emails, the prompting, everything which went with it, very much appreciated. And as we said, we want this to be the beginning of something. That this is, these workshops now have been designed to demonstrate how a variety of different individuals and organizations have embraced community history online, and the goal is really to begin to build a community of those who do this work, to inspire others, to connect us together, and to really advance a collective enterprise here. So thanks very much to them, and also thanks to everyone who's participated as well. Our design, and Gavin will speak to this again in a moment, is to really try and use this as a healthy starting point, and to take this forward. So we'll certainly be in touch with all of you going forward, and would like to engage with you, and like to think about how we can work on this in the months and hopefully years ahead. So my thanks to everyone again. Gavin, let me pass over to you.
Thank you, Adam. And yes, just to echo Adam's sentiments, thank you very much to Geraldine and Eli in particular for helping us drive this. Thanks to our other speakers through the various sessions that we've done. Folks, what we're going to do is a little while after this session, in the next week or so, we'll send out a questionnaire to all of you. We had well over 200 people subscribe to our various talks, these three sessions. And what we're going to do is ask you whether you'd like to remain in contact. We will share all the various links that have been shared and examples given by the various speakers over the past 3 weeks. And the intention is to build this community. We'll start with newsletters, interactive questionnaires, and depending on the interest and the take-up from our people, from the 200 odd people who have been part of these sessions, we'll build it into whether a Facebook page or into a website or whatever seems to work best. We've got a lot of various options that have been presented to us. And at the same time, we're also going to ask you if there's anything else or any other aspects related to the community history online that you would like to hear from speakers, topics, and we will set up another series of talks related to this greater topic going forward. Just to reiterate, if you missed any of the previous sessions, go to the South African Jewish Museum's YouTube channel. Very simple, go to YouTube, type in South African Jewish Museum, and the recordings of all these talks will appear there. When we get back to you with our questionnaire, we'll also send through all the various links for the various sites that were presented. And thank you for joining us. This is part of the programming at the museum and also at the Kaplan Centre. There are lots of other things that we have on the go. So I recommend that all of you go to our respective websites. If you go to the South African Jewish Museum website, there's a place where you can enter your details to be connected to our newsletters. I assume there's a similar thing on the Kaplan Centre website, but also go to our Facebook pages where we list events and activities as well. So there is a lot of very active engagement happening around South African and Southern African Jewish history and heritage. And if you obviously have an interest, so please do join us for our future programming. Thank you very much for joining us today. Look out for the follow-up emails, and please do share your thoughts with us via that format when we send it through. Have a lovely day. Adam, thank you very much for moderating today. And Katie as well, thank you for being part of the early progress and setting this up. Eric and David, thank you so much for agreeing to participate today. And thank you all, everybody. We look forward to building an active, engaged community online, looking after our heritage and history. I'm going to end us off over there. Thanks for joining us, and stay safe, everybody.
And thanks to Gavin from all of us, and to Adam. So wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, bye-bye.
Thank you all.